Sorry about that. Nina, I can't find you. There we go. Hello, everybody, and welcome to this session. Are we ready to get started right now? I don't know the timing. Are we on time to start right immediately? Okay, welcome everybody, and it's nice to see so many familiar faces. And Heather, I'm a little nervous that you're in this session because you are the expert on, on the open standards. So it's great to see you all. And again, my name is Judy Browse, and I'm the executive director of NAAEE, and we'll be talking about engaging people in conservation and a lot of the resources we have. And I'm here with Nina Hamilton, who is the director of international programs and leadership. And Nina, thank you for joining. It is so great to work with you, and Nina brings so much to everything that we do at NAAEE. And we're really excited to be here at this meeting and to meet so many of you and hear what all the great work you are doing. It's fantastic, and excited to be part of this charter group in terms of education. I hope this continues because it's so important to think about the education work that we do in conservation, in our conservation work. So if you could introduce yourself in the chat so we can get to know each other, because we won't take the time to go all the way around, but really want to hear kind of where you're zooming in from, what you do, and just kind of your expertise so we can get a little bit of a sense of who you are. I wish we had a couple of hours here, but we are going to go pretty quickly and we'll cover as much as we can, and then we'll make sure you get the slides if we miss anything. So as I mentioned in the quick note beforehand, we're going to just do a snapshot of NAAEE, highlights from a number of resources, talk about EE works, and take questions throughout. This is going to be a really informal session, so please interrupt. And some of the key ideas we're hoping to cover is that education is a key tool of conservation, both in the short term and long term. Planning does help. It's really great if you know where you're going, and we'll talk more about that. And just knowing that education works at both the individual and collective level. And a lot of the field of EE is moving toward collective impact, but it's all important. And education is much more than knowledge, and the whole field has a very strong research foundation, which is really important. There's a lot behind what we're doing. But we're going to start off with an activity. And so what I am going to do, if you're all ready, and thank you for putting your name and where you're calling in from, that really is helpful. Great to see all of you. Okay, I am going to ask you a question. In the chat, I want you to write your answer. Nina's going to be looking, and I'll be looking to see who gets it first. Okay. And the first person who gets the answer, the correct answer, wins a prize. Okay. So all you have to do is answer the question. It's super easy, and we'll just see how fast you can do this. Okay. You ready, Nina?
Yep.
Okay, folks, here we go. How many squares do you see? I see a bunch of answers coming in. Ooh, they're changing now. I love it, Lindsay. Wait, no, too many.
Oh, no.
Uh-oh. Let's see. We'll
Judy,
keep
I just
looking.
realized I don't think I know the correct answer.
Well, I'm looking too.
Okay.
So we'll see if the first one that gets it. Nobody's got it yet. Come on. We're getting close. Sophie, you're getting there. Now, normally, oh, ooh, Lisa has 29. I love this. And normally we do this in pairs or trios, and I'll talk about that. So, oh, I just lost my chat. Whoops. Sorry. I can't get into the chat, Nina. Can you see it?
Yeah, I can. So we've got 24, 26, 21. Earlier on we
I
had a
think 29
27.
wins. Whoever has 29 is the closest. And I have no idea why my chat disappeared, but hopefully I will find it again.
What was the
Um,
answer? Or
the
we haven't
answer,
got there yet?
the answer is 30. Okay, so there are 30, and I'll show you in a minute where all these are, but great guesses, everyone. Ah, Suzanne had it. There we go, 30. So Suzanne, we'll give out two prizes, 29 and 30, because it really was a collaborative process here. So just quickly, many of you know that there are a lot of squares here. So there's the overall square around the whole outside. There's 16, there are these, there are these. And so if you count them all, you'll come up to 30. And I was doing this with one group of, actually it was undergraduates, and they said 31 because squares at the top of this. I thought that was pretty creative. Um, but this activity, sometimes we use it in a workshop to see that we don't always see the potential solutions on our own, and that we sometimes need to learn from others, and that we really can't solve our environmental and social problems without working together. And the other piece that we talk about is taking part in experiences and reflecting on those experiences can really help the deeper learning. And we know that none of us is as smart as all of us. And we know that. This is actually my favorite quote about experiential learning, that if you grab a cat by the tail, you'll learn things you cannot learn in any other way. That is experiential learning. So it is a great activity to use in trios and pairs and make sure that everybody can say the answer so that you're teaching each other what you're looking at and what you see. And there's so many activities like this to get started on the importance of working together and teamwork. So we're going to do quick intros so you know who I am and who Nina is. So I have been in the field of environmental education for a long time. I've been so lucky to work in so many amazing groups like On the Hill, the National Wildlife Federation. I helped do EE at the Peace Corps. I was the head of education at WWF US and worked around the world, head of education at Audubon, and I've been at NAAEE, which is all about environmental education, for 13 years. And really focused on education, conservation, social equity, strategy, and policy. And I'm going to turn it over to Nina so you can introduce yourself.
Yeah, and good to see all of you. Thanks for joining our session. So, similar to Judy, I've got maybe not quite as much as experience as she does, but a little over a decade. I started out my career working in community-based and rights-based conservation, and kind of worked my way up working in more global networks and professional associations, including some work with SCB. And that is how I found my way to NAAA, a good merge of those two interests of mine.
Thanks, Nina, and so happy you're on the team. And all of you will get the slides and the links. So remember to save the chat so you can keep the links, because we're going to put in links for each other. And again, please add any questions in the chat. When Nina's talking, I'll look at it, and she'll look at it when I'm talking, and make sure we can answer any questions you have. And if you need closed captioning, I think Nina turned it on. So thank you so much. Okay, first we're going to introduce NAAEE in case you don't know who we are, because some of what we're doing might be of interest. And we do have a lot of resources on our website. As I mentioned earlier, we are the professional association, and we do try to support educators, policymakers, and really people that are working on education around the world. And we like to talk about supporting the educators that are building the environmental problem solvers of the future, no matter what the age, and trying to create this better future with our work and using the power of education to do that. We are 54 years old, and we learn something new absolutely 10 times a day of what we might do differently or do in a different way. And like all of you in this room, we are all trying to create positive change at the community level, the state, the province, the country level, whatever level you're working on. What can we do to make the world better using education? And this really is an important slide for us, because we know that environmental education is a critical tool when we're trying to find solutions to tough issues, but it's not always part of the solutions toolkit when we're talking about issues like climate change or others. Even on a slide earlier, there's a whole thing on conservation biology or conservation, and education wasn't part of it. Communications was, but education wasn't part of it. We also try not to get hung up on definitions. There are a lot of ways to talk about education or the work we're doing in education. And I would just suggest that you use the best strategy in the words you that make sense for your work and your audience to actually talk about how education can move us forward. So again, our tagline is, what is the education we need for the world we want? And we really do have conversations about what is it we should be doing to have more impact, engage more people, be more accessible, make sure we're centering equity in what we are doing. And a lot of people hear the word education and they think knowledge, they think facts. And all of us that are working in education, I know many of you know that it's way beyond knowledge and awareness, although awareness and knowledge really important. It's developing skills, those dispositions that help motivate us and lead us to actually take positive action and become more engaged in civic life individually and collectively. So that's what we're trying to do with EE. It's part of the definition of what environmental education is all about. And a big question for all of us is, how do we get people to take action, do something differently that's going to help make the world a better place? What does that look like? And there are lots of ways, of course, to take action. Millions of Americans care about the environment. How do we move them up to engage, to activate? And what are the actions that are meaningful for individuals and communities? What are the kinds of actions that will move the world toward healthier communities and a healthier environment? Environmental ed is also about lifelong learning, and so are we. We work with all audiences across the cradle to gray spectrum. We work on a lot of different areas of building capacity. We convene people, we advance professional development, we promote excellence in the field, we lead coalitions and work on coalitions, and we also work on different themes. And you can find a lot of resources on our site for climate change education, on leadership, on justice and belonging, on eSTEM. We're doing a lot of different things, and you can just go to our website and find out more. And we're grounded in sustainability. You can't do this work on environment without talking about social equity and community well-being and shared prosperity. And we also work across disciplines and audience and sectors, formal and non-formal. And as I mentioned earlier, we are working to create a more just and inclusive movement. It's core to what we do. And we need to keep talking about this and figuring out ways to talk about it during a really difficult in the US regime of what can we do to keep moving this critical work forward and making sure that we are creating spaces that are accessible to everyone and dealing with the power dynamics that exist in every single organization, every community, everything that we do, and recognizing that and making sure we have the skills to help advance this work. And we focus on race and ethnicity, but also all of the areas where people have been discriminated against. And we need to keep doing this thinking about how do we make our work more accessible and inclusive. And I just want to throw out, I love this cartoon because I think probably a lot of the women here have experienced this before. But the gender issue is still very, very prevalent, especially in our conservation work. So partnerships are key to what we do. We can't do this work without working with partners. And this is just a sample of the networks and partners we work with. We can't do this without partners, and we love working with new partners. And I've already found new partners by being part of this. So none of us can do this work alone, and the people that we do work bring new perspectives and interests to the table. We also talk about being a network of networks, and I'll just highlight really quickly, and you can go on the website and find out more. Our affiliate network, this is one of our biggest assets. We have 52 state, regional, and provincial affiliates across North America, and they're doing the same work we are and pointing in the same direction to accomplish as much as we can together. We also oversee the Natural Start Alliance, which is an early childhood education network. And we want every single young person to have access to a great education and care about nature in the world starting in the earliest years. So we have a number of members you can join for free. We do reports that really look at what's going on, like with nature preschools in the United States. This is one of my favorite graphs where there were in 1960 no nature preschools, and look at that. It's really becoming much more prevalent, and we want to make sure that these nature preschools are accessible to everyone. Nina, I'm going to turn it over to you to talk about the GEEP.
All right. Thanks, Judy. Let me make sure I've got there. Is that working? I think it
Yep,
did.
it did.
All right. So, yes, I'm going to be talking about the Global Environmental Education Partnership. So, NAAE is the secretariat of this global partnership. And we are working together with the Taiwan Ministry of Environment, the USC and the US EPA to help build this global network. And we're working with a number of other national, global, regional organizations and networks around the world that are helping us make this this learning network possible. And oh, it's going forward too quickly here. The goal of the GEEP is to build this vibrant learning network that's with the goal of strengthening capacity for environmental education around the globe. So helping us really broaden our audience and step outside of North America and be working with partners around the world. And collaboration is really key to the GEEP. Working across borders, again, working with our partners that are working in countries and regions around the world, all around sharing effective practice, sparking new collaborations, sparking new opportunities for learning. Oh, Judy, it's taking a while when I try
I'll
to.
keep changing it. I'll just change it.
Okay. We've been at this for 10 years now, sharing resources, developing resources, sparking new collaborations, promoting learning across borders. On our website, we've got a report that highlights some of our highlights and accomplishments over the last 10 years. So really encourage you to take a look at that. Next slide. And we've got an amazing advisory group that includes representatives from, I think, almost all the continents except Antarctica, really representing regions around the world that really bring great ideas and expertise into the next steps for the GEEP. And in everything that we do with the GEEP, we are constantly emphasizing how critical environmental education is for achieving the Sustainable Development Goals, as it is interdisciplinary and recognizes how the goals are interconnected. So this is another key aspect of all of our resources with GEEP. And a really key element of the GEEP is the resources that we have developed with our partners over the last 10 years. So one of these is our case study collection. We currently have 26 case studies published. These highlight effective practice around the world. We have also put together an ebook that complements these case studies that helps educators and I guess trainers of environmental educators. It helps them kind of walk through how to use case studies as a learning tool. It's a really great resource, and it includes several chapters on different key topics within environmental education. And these case studies not only talk about the activities that are, that were going on, but also what were elements for the project's success? What were the outcomes that they saw? We've also got a collection of country profiles. We've got over 70 countries represented now, and these highlight national level initiatives and policy and environmental education. We've heard from a number of higher education partners and professors that found this to be a really great educational tool in their classes as well. And next slide. And we really encourage you to connect with us with the GEEP. So we've got a newsletter. You can sign up on our website. I can put a couple other links in the chat here in a second. We put out great webinars. So really encourage you to connect with us and explore the other resources that we've got. Another way to connect with us is on EE Pro. I'll put the link to that in the chat. It's our online platform for networking and sharing resources. And we do have a global EE group, which is the home of the GEEP on EE Pro. And as Judy mentioned earlier, or in the preview, we're also working with UNESCO and the Foundation for Environmental Education on Education Challenge 6.1, which is part of the UN Decade on Ecosystem Restoration, where we're trying to promote the importance of education for education for ecosystem restoration and sharing resources and case studies, bright spots from across our networks of what does good ecosystem restoration education look like in practice.
Thanks, Nina. And again, if you have any questions, put them in the link. I put them in the chat. I know we're going pretty quickly here, but we want to cover a lot of things so you have it later. And we are doing a number of other programs and supporting partners, and I'll just mention a couple more, and then we'll get into the tools of engagement. We work with several government partners, hope we continue to work with several government partners. It's been tricky this year, as many of you know. As I mentioned, climate change is one of our priorities, and you can go online and see a lot of resources for those of you working in climate change and looking at climate change education. We do convene people in a number of different ways. We have 2 annual conferences each year. The Natural Start Conference, which just wrapped up, but you can still register and listen to sessions if you're interested. And then the NAAEE conference, our 54th conference is in late October. The research symposium is on the 30th, and then the full conference is the week of November 3rd through the 6th. And then we have a number of leadership programs and other resources. And Nina, if you want to take on the leadership piece, and then I'll wrap it up and we'll move.
So this is a key strategic goal of ours through both NAAEE and the GEEP. We've got a number of programs that are working with different audiences or professionals that are at different stages in their careers. Next slide. So one of these programs is the Sea Change Fellowship, where we bring together a cohort of really incredible environmental education and civic engagement professionals. They work together over the course of 18 months on community projects, but they're also learning from each other. And it's really about building capacity and helping to strengthen that connection between civic engagement and environmental education. We've also got EE 30 Under 30, which is our Youth Leadership Awards program, where each year we recognize 30 leaders under the age of 30 from around the world, really celebrating and recognizing their unique leadership styles. So if you've got a young leader that you know of that would be a really great fit for this, please keep a lookout. We open up applications each spring.
It's coming back, don't worry.
And I get a second here to breathe. So we've got over 270 alumni from over 50 countries around the world. It's a really incredible group. You can go and view all their bios on our website. Feel free to reach out if you want to connect with any of them. We're happy to help make connections happen. And then, again, about the UN Decade and our involvement in this, I really encourage you to take a look at the resources that we've highlighted on our website. I put the link in the chat. And we're still developing this initiative, so there will be more to come on this in the next few months.
Thank you, Nina. And Suzanne, I'll get to your question in just a second. And just want to mention the virtual learning community that we have called EE Pro. Anyone can join. I hope many of you already have joined because we have a lot of resources on there that might be helpful to what you're doing. There are webinars recorded, there's research, there's discussion groups and more. And it's really a great place to not only find other people who care about what you care about, but be able to talk about issues. And we hope to link with many of the people we've met here. For example, we have discussion groups on connecting to nature, conservation and behavior change, equity and inclusion, a lot of different things. And there's a research library. We are always trying to link research and practice and research. It's a partnership with the Children and Nature Network. And we include research summaries and syntheses because a lot of educators don't have time to dig into the actual articles. So these are summaries and these syntheses that we hope can help people. And we have over 2,000 right now. It's probably getting closer to 2,200, 2,300. So we're excited about that. And then we do monthly webinars. We just had one on One Health, and that was mentioned this morning. I think Lisa mentioned it, which is recorded and great. And we have one coming up on AI, education, and ethics for a changing world. We're going to probably do part 1, part 2, part 3 on AI. There's a lot going on. And we also have a podcast that we have piloted in the last year called The World We Want. So that is NAAEE at speed in terms of what we're doing. And Suzanne, to answer your question, the difference between the research symposium and the conference is that the research symposium has traditionally been for what is the ongoing research happening in the world, and everybody is presenting on that research that is developing and also doing posters on um, research that has already been completed. So it's a chance for more on the academic side, what is happening in terms of research in this field. But there is overlap with the full conference, and we do have researchers that present at the full conference. And when we're and we do every other year is virtual. This year it's virtual. When we're in person, we're going to try to better combine the research symposium and the full conference. So it's a great question. Any questions that anyone else has? And Nina can, if you can see and I can't, is anyone
Nothing
still
else
awake?
so far. I see some
O-
smiles, so yeah, it looks like they are.
Okay, so now I'm going to dig into the tools of engagement for probably the next 15 minutes and telling you about this resource. And again, we're going to go really quickly because it's a lot to cover. And we wanted to give you as many resources as possible because you're all coming from different places. Um, I always love this quote. If you don't know where you're going, any path will get you there. It's that planning piece that's so important. What are we trying to do? And the toolkit is all about conservation planning with people in mind. And I know that many of you are using education or will use education in your work. And we think it's really important to think about which strategies and audiences will get you where you want to go. Besides thinking about like what are you trying to do? Who are you going to engage with to get there? And I have worked with a number of conservation groups, and I got asked this question so many times, well, why do we do an education? It's a conservation organization, and that is still happening. I talked to all my colleagues. And at the same time, how do we build a conservation constituency? And these two are linked because we need education in so many ways to do our work. And so a lot of what I've spent my career on is looking at what is the role of environmental education in achieving our conservation goals, as well as creating healthier communities and more equitable communities? And in a lot of groups, you've got your scientists and policymakers somewhere, and then you've got your educators somewhere else, and you've got your communicators. And there's not always the best communication or working together so that we can actually achieve integrated conservation. And this is very simplified, as you know, but I really have worked in places where we are not connected, we are divided. And conservation is all about people. So the people part in both the planning and the action is super important. And so we look at the social strategies, it's education, it's social marketing, it's advocacy, it's all the ways we engage people and communication to try and engage people in our work. So the tools of engagement came out of a need for really thinking about people in the conservation planning process. And we started when the open standards were really young and thinking about we need more on the people part and the human welfare part. And now that has happened in, 5.0. But this is a version that we hope conservation professionals that working in education settings can use. And we collaborated with a lot of folks. And as we revise these, we are collaborating with a lot more folks because the world has changed since these were developed, but a lot of things are still core in terms of planning. And I have to say, Heather and Jim did an amazing job covering the open standards in their presentation. And I hope if you miss it, you listen to their recording. It's an adaptive management process and really helpful if you're doing conservation work. And this is from Jim's presentation this morning. I stole it, Jim, of looking at what are you trying to do, and then thinking about why and how you get there. And it's really a helpful, thoughtful process that has so much input from around the world for so many years. So in the chat, if you could put on a scale of 1 to 5, because I know not everybody was with Jim and Heather this morning, how much do you know about the open standards? 5, you're an expert, you know everything. 1, you haven't even heard of them. Can you put a number from 1 to 5? 5, you're an expert. 1, you don't know much, in the chat so I can see kind of where you are on this. And I'm going to go quickly if you're all experts.
We've got
And I don't.
1, 2, 3, 4.5. A little humble there.
Oh, great. Look at
4.75.
this. Okay. I love that
Round
Jim
that
is
up to
only a
5.
4.5. He's a, well, thanks everyone. So we'll take a little bit of time to go through this and talk a little bit about how you can use this in your work. I encourage you to visit the website to find out more about the Open Standards 5.0, because the toolkit was built on 2.0 and we're updating that. But what we've got in the toolkit is starting with the vision, looking at your targets or focus, looking at the threats and root causes like Jim and Heather talked about, thinking about your goals and objectives. But we spend a lot of time on audiences and strategies, and then thinking about how you are actually measuring your success along the way. So it's really a common sense planning process, like what are you trying to do? And then thinking about backing up from that, what do you need to do to achieve your goals? And so what is your biodiversity focus? Is it species? Is it assemblages? Is it ecosystems? What are you thinking about? And what is the human welfare focus? How do people enter into this? Because you might be focused only on health or human welfare, or you might be focused on conservation and human interface because they're all connected. And then, of course, thinking about the threats. What are the threats to what you're trying to do? And one of the things as educators we can do is really do some creative activities and thinking about what are the root causes of what is happening. So this is an activity that you can do of thinking about what is your focus or target. I think the 5.0 guidelines talk about focus instead of target. I always talk about what is your conservation target or your human welfare target? What are the threats? And then what are the root causes? And this takes some thinking to really think this through. And Heather and Jim outlined a lot of different tools that can help you. There are activities in our toolkit that can help as well as you dig into what are the actual root causes that is making something happen, the behaviors or the threats that are causing your target to be in trouble. And one of those activities is the 5 whys. And some of you have probably done this activity. You can do it in a workshop. It's on page 134 and 35 in the toolkit. But for example, you can have one partner talk about the threat or problem you're trying to resolve. And if we had time, we would have done this. And then the first partner asks, so why do you think this is happening? And then you think about that. Well, why is that happening? And you keep going until you actually get to the root cause. So there is a lot of digging in to get to the root causes where education can actually have impact. And then you can do a threat analysis, of course, and this is something that the Open Standards, IUCN, and other groups can have a lot about how you do this threat analysis. And then the people part of the toolkit is the main part of the tools of engagement. And we're, as I mentioned, updating this. And if you're interested in being a part of this, let us know. We'd love to work with you. We'll be focusing on the Open Standards 5.0, more on community, more on technology, climate, all the things that have changed in the last decade, updated examples, and just all the things that are happening in society right now. And so this is the outline for the tools of engagement that know where you're going, understand the problems in the context, the people factor, which we're talking about, where you're going, a lot of planning tools, and then the appendix. So on the people part, we're thinking about who is your audience? What are your short-term and long-term goals? What do you want people to do? How will you persuade them? Where does behavior change fit into this? So there a lot of questions came up as we were putting this together. When do you use education? When do you use social marketing? Which audiences and why? Which approaches? How do you find out more about your target audience? What does the research say? How do I measure my impact? So that's how we started framing the toolkit based on the feedback we were getting. And I was working at WWF at the time and then Audubon and working with a lot of different people from the zoo and aquarium world and others. And so thinking about your audience, who's directly causing the problem, who can best influence the right people, and, what do you want to keep in mind when you think about audience? And there are three critical rules, no matter what you're doing when you want to think about audience. First one is know your audience. Second one, you can guess, know your audience. The third is know your audience. So I used to work on a magazine called Ranger Rick, and these were the things we live by. If you don't know who you're talking to, you can't possibly write an article that will relate to what they care about. And that's the same for conservation. If you don't know who you're talking to or who you're trying to influence, you're going to have a much harder time getting to where you want to go. And we have an audience matrix activity on page 44 in the toolkit that you can look at. We have activities like how much do you know about what makes your audience tick? So what do you want them to know? What do you want them to believe? What do you want them to do? And I just want you to take 1 second here and think about an audience that you would like to work with, a new or a different audience that you haven't worked with. And I just want you to think about what don't you know about your audience that you wish you did, and how could you find out what you don't know? So think about that for a minute. We're all working with a lot of times the audiences we always work with. Think about an audience you're not working with that you'd like to work with, and just put your answers in the chat if anybody has ideas on that. And you can also come off mute if you want to say something. I'll give you a few minutes. I know, let's see here. Nina, any ideas from you? Any audiences you want to work with that we're not working with at NAAEE that we should be working with?
I haven't thought about this just yet.
So I'll give you all time to think about that and just tell you a couple of things you can do as you think about new audiences. We also have an activity about painting a picture of your audience. Oh, Heather, I love that. Billionaires. Luckily, there are some billionaires who care about conservation, but I love this activity about painting a picture of your audience. What do they care about? What keeps them up at night? That kind of thing. Um, Developing new teen programming. That's a great one too. And how do you find out about teens? How do you find out about billionaires? Um, and there are a lot of ways if you're thinking locally, like looking at the blogs, looking at the magazines they look at, joining a lunch roundtable, going to taking pizza with senior citizens. Lots of ways to figure this out, but really important to get to know them as much as we possibly can. These are some good ones working with community colleges. We also have a section in the toolkit about developing messages that resonate. And we worked with a group called Spitfire Strategies. They do something called the SMART chart that Nina will put in the chat. A really great tool to think about communications and messaging. And they also have discovering the action activation point that helps people, take action. Where are you? So I would encourage you to check out Spitfire. They do such great work. And thanks for putting all these in here. Really good ideas about new audience that you want to reach. We also know that it does take time and effort to work with partners. It's not just all hunky-dory. It's hard, but we can't do this work without working with others. It's really important. And I know that probably a lot of you want to try and change behavior or help reinforce behaviors with the audiences you're working with. And so we don't have time to get into a ton on behavior change, but we do know a lot about behavior change and what makes people do something differently. I'm just going to show a quick video here.
Judy. I'm not sure that your audio is sharing.
What was that?
I don't think the audio is shared.
Okay, hold on. Let me just share this again. I forget this all the time. I'm probably the only one that does that. So a creative way to get people to do something differently. So that's kind of a fun example, but um, there are lots of ways to get people to do something differently, either individually or collectively. And again, take a minute to think about what made you change your behavior to do something positive or to stop doing something or do something, and some of the reasons you made a change. And you can also think about that and put it in the chat, and we'll keep going because behavior change isn't easy. We do the things we do for a reason. And as many of you who work in behavior change know, it's really hard. And we know that knowledge alone is not going to get us where we need to go. We know that there's a lot more to behavior change than knowledge. And when I grew up 100 years ago, we always learned, okay, knowledge will lead to attitude change that leads to action, and that actually doesn't work. So there are lots of influences on what we do and what we don't do that we need to think about as we're trying to put our programs together and encourage people to do something different. And there are a lot of theories of behavior change. There are a lot of models. There's no one right way to think about this. So this other resource that Nina will put in is called Influencing Conservation Action. And as I mentioned, we did this with a number of other organizations. And we answered 20 questions that people asked us, and then our colleagues at the universities answered the questions. Does knowledge lead to action? Are people likely to do something if they have 20 options or two options? Like, what's going to actually work? And one of the things I like about this is we summarized a number of the behavior change theories, and we hope to update this one as well. I was just talking to my colleague at Stanford. And so the behavior change part is an important part of our work in education and what we're trying to do, as well as in social marketing, communication, and advocacy. And then thinking about what are the strategies we do want to use in our work in conservation. And education is one tool, not the only tool, not always the most effective tool, depending on what you're trying to do. So when you think about environmental education, we're actually helping people learn how to think critically, not telling them what to think. Even if we want them to take action, we're not telling them which actions to take individually and collectively. We're hoping they can figure that out and learn. Social marketing is another tool, and it actually has a target behavior change, behavior that you want to change, like stop smoking, wear a seatbelt, wear a condom, and then backing up. What are the barriers to that behavior change? If you want everybody to stop smoking, what do you need to do? How do you get there to that targeted behavior change? So, from the influencing conservation action, it's really thinking about over time, how do you get people using marketing approaches to address the barriers to your audience to get them to do what you hope you want them to do? So it's really getting there and getting that action and sustaining that action. And you've all seen a lot of social marketing campaigns. Social marketing is great, but as I mentioned before, changing behavior isn't easy, even with a combo of education and social marketing. So just think about that. And I want you to put in the chat if you think these are true or false. It's important to eat 5 fruits and vegetables a day. We should get exercise 5 times a week, and you shouldn't talk or text while driving. True or false? We've got true for all of those. Lisa, thank you. Lindsay, they're all true. Yep. Okay. So, how many of you worked out 5 times last week? Okay, now if everybody here has already worked out 5 times a week, you are not a good control group here. But we don't always do what we know we should do, or even what we want to do. And so social marketing is looking at, why didn't you work out? Is it time? You didn't have a chance. You couldn't get to the gym. So there are a lot of barriers on why we don't do things. And figuring these out can really help us get to, why are people acting the way they are, either individually or collectively. So social marketing is really great when you have a targeted action. It doesn't always transfer. Like if you stop smoking, it doesn't mean that you're going to wear your seatbelt necessarily or do something else. So social marketing and education together can be great. So that's a whole nother thing. There's tons on social marketing. There's tons on education. The other thing I wanted to just mention, and I know we're running out of time, is, what is your strategy for societal change? It can take 10 to 15 years to change societal values. What is your long and short-term strategies? How do you balance? Education is both short-term and long-term. So if you just think about all the talking we've had in the last couple of days about connecting to nature, we know nature is amazing. We know all the benefits. We know that from our earliest years to our senior years, we need nature. Well, what's the connection between connecting to nature and achieving our conservation goals or creating healthier communities? We have a lot of research. We need more research on this, but we also need to remember that education can lay a foundation for conservation and help people develop conservation values that last a lifetime. And then finally, the toolkit has a lot on evaluating our efforts. What is your theory of change that Jim and Heather already mentioned? There's a lot in there on that, on logic modules, on results chains. And then there's a section on planning and other tools. We have 34 tools and activities that you can use in workshops and to help with your training when you're working with others. So the bottom line here is, planning is common sense. But you shouldn't spend all your time planning. You need to do things. And also, there are a lot of choices as you're trying, as you know, to put a program together. And if you don't have any criteria for, why are you choosing this audience, or what are you trying to do, it can be harder. So the tools of engagement is trying to help you think deliberately and strategically about what you are trying to do. So I know we covered that all pretty quickly, and we still have a few more things. Would you rather we take questions and maybe end it here, or keep going and stay for 2 more minutes and answer questions? What do you think, Nina? You seeing any questions?
No questions in the chat, but if anyone has something, or if you want to raise your hand or unmute, feel free to.
So we'll keep going and just keep going through all these so that you have all the resources available. So Nina, you want to quickly go through the community engagement?
Yes, and Suzanne says they'd love to hear more, so we will keep going.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Suzanne. We'll
Suzanne.
just keep talking.
So, yet another resource that we want to share with you all is our guidelines for excellence. So, I think go on to the next slide, Judy. So, this is another resource of ours that is all about helping to promote excellence in the field. So, our guidelines for excellence on the next slide, these are a series of guidelines of practical a very practical resource that you can use in the field to help with your practice in the field. We've actually got 7 of them now, and they're all available to download for free. You can download the PDFs. We've also got a number of other resources online. If you are reading through the guidelines and you're like, gosh, I want to share these with everyone I know, we've got resources for you to lead a workshop or to help to share and promote these guidelines with other, with other educators that you might be working with. So all of these are available on our website. They were developed through a very participatory process with hundreds, more than 1,000. Judy, you were you were around when these were developed. Folks from across our network, because we really wanted to capture this collective wisdom from across the NAAA network. And it was just also a way to develop, to engage those in our network in these deep discussions about what does it mean to have quality environmental education practice, and how do we capture that in a resource that others can use. And so I'll share just a little preview of one of them to give you an idea of kind of how these are structured. So one of our most popular sets of these is the Community Engagement Guidelines for Excellence. And it's really about how you can really root your environmental education practice in communities, and how you can be listening to the communities that you're working with. And it is focused on educators, but it really applies to anyone who's working with communities in any capacity. So the next slide. So each of the guidelines are organized around key characteristics. So these are the ones that fall under the community engagement guidelines. And we hope that this is just a practical way for you to kind of be thinking about these different topics within environmental education. And then under each of the key characteristics, there's kind of other layers of guidelines in there. Next slide. So yeah, these guidelines for excellence, they're all about helping you think about effective practice, and you can flip through, and there might be a lot that you're already doing, and you can find in there maybe some gaps or some areas that you might want to work on. And they all build on examples from the field. They've got little vignettes of examples from around the field. And again, all of the guides are available online. And then yeah, I'll share the link in the chat. And then Judy, are
Thanks,
you
Nina.
doing eWorks, or am I?
Yeah,
You are.
I'll do this one, and just wanted to say that we do update the guidelines continually. So they started in 1994, and we have updated all of them. So happy to answer any questions about the guidelines. And of course, you have all our emails so that we can stay in touch with all of you. And just really wanted to highlight the EE Works project that we did. We used to call it From Anecdotes to Evidence. But we were being asked on the Hill and in other places to justify education, and what is the evidence that EE works? Because we have heard people say it takes a long time, it's a back burner issue, it's a black hole, you just spend money and you can't measure your impact. None of that is true. But what is the evidence, and what are the stories? And a lot of times we have said, well, we know EE works because we see the impact in our programs. We see that people's lives are changed. But we felt like we needed to look at what is the research telling us, so that we have evidence and we have stories. So that's where EE Works came about. We really wanted to say that, and need to be able, not just because we said it works, but it actually, we can show that it works. So it doesn't mean we don't need compelling stories. Stories are what move people. And we have so many great stories in our field in conservation education, but we also need evidence. So what is the impact of environmental education? What outcomes are important? And what existing evidence documents that? So this project looked at different themes, and looking at the research, which is the evidence, looking at the stories that illustrate the data that came from the research articles, communication and tools. How do we talk about this? Like, if you need to talk to your boss at WWF about why education, here are some things you can think about. And then the training and professional development. We just did a webinar on eWorks with all the researchers who worked with us. And we worked with a lot of partners. Stanford's been the lead, but we worked with a lot of different groups. And there were 8 systematic reviews and a lot of studies analyzed, looking at what the outcomes are. And we could do so many more to really understand this. And we include an executive summary of the synthesis paper. Each one has an academic paper that was published, and then examples of educational programs and information on what is the process we used. If you don't know what a systematic review is, it talks about what we did and what the process was all about, and then how to communicate about the results. So you can look online. There are actually 8. This has 7, but all the summaries are online, like the impact of EE on conservation and environmental quality, a lot of articles and looking at what we found from that analysis. The K through 12, as I mentioned, there's a lot more besides just knowledge and science, and there's emotional and social skills, and just a lot of different things that have come out of education that help us produce better communities, better students, better learners, all of that good stuff. So in conclusion here, and I knew we ran through a lot of different things, a few last words about EE. And when we think about the future, we've asked a lot of people if they're hopeful. And I know this is a very difficult time in the US and in other parts of the world. And we asked many people, but we asked a number of students, are you hopeful? And a lot of people are not hopeful. Um, and I just want to say a few words. The need has never been greater for environmental education and the work that all of you are doing. It is so critical. And even during tough times, we have to think about, okay, how can education help us move forward? What can we do? What are the kinds of things that we can do to move things forward in society? And we know that it can get super discouraging, that every day there's something that's pushing back on some of the key things that we care about. So, what can we do as educators? And I just want to say that I think educators bring hope. You wouldn't be doing what you're doing if you weren't hopeful about the future and that we could do things differently. And I believe that educators help people work through the tough issues. What are the tools? How can we respond? What are ways to navigate the tough stuff? And that's where, to me, education is a critical tool in our toolbox for addressing these issues. It engages people, it provides opportunities, it can give people a new worldview. And there's so many things that education can do to help us move forward. So I do hope you've gotten some great ideas by being part of it this week. I know I have, and I've made a lot of contacts, and I hope to see some of you at our conference in October and November. So thanks so much for being a great group and listening. We've covered a whole lot, and you have been a great group, and I appreciate it all you do. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And here are our emails if you want to get in touch. jbrowse@NAAEE.org and Nina@NAAEE.org. And I'm going to stop sharing and see, we have 3 more minutes. Victoria.
I just had a kind of an interesting question. There's this conservation organization that I'm very tangentially have worked with a little bit, like interviewed them for a dissertation chapter. And so they work with bats. And so they made this decision recently to like essentially pull away from education about bats. They said, we've done enough. And when you, I don't know, is that, I guess it was just a really interesting thing that's been sitting with me is they're like, well, we did a lot of bat education for like 30 years and now we feel like we're done. The culture has changed enough. People like bats. I guess as educators, what do you think about that? Like
Yeah.
in terms of like, is it an ongoing thing or is there ever like a
Yeah.
enough
Yeah.
point? It was just an interesting thing I've been
Yeah,
sitting with.
no,
So
that's a really interesting comment, and I have actually heard that in different ways my entire career. You know, we don't need education. What we need is action today, and we need to reach policymakers. So I'd answer that in a couple of ways. First of all, there are always new people coming up the ranks. We've never educated everyone about bats, for example. And then there are other things that we're learning about the bat connection to other things. So we always need education. It's what type and who are we talking to? Um, and then, you know, when you think about anything like education, it is integrated into everything we learn in society. So that's kind of a short-sighted view that all of a sudden, okay, we've accomplished everything we need. It reminds me of when USAID stopped educating women about birth control and then population increased and there are just so many interconnected issues. So I would say we always need education, but we need to be thoughtful about what we're doing, why we're doing it. Is it the best tool for what we're actually trying to do? And and I don't know if it was Bat Conservation International or one of the other groups, because I have worked with them before. Um, because it's easy again to say education takes a long time, it doesn't really work, and what we need to do is this and this and this. You can decide that you don't have the resources to spend on education, but a lot of conservation groups have said we don't have the resources to spend on education. They stop doing education. Then they realize their membership is all older white women that are over 70, and they need a stronger conservation constituency. So as you can tell, I'm pretty vehement about we need education, but we need to think about what we're doing and why we're doing it. But it's a great question.
Well, thank you for sharing that. It's been that just hearing that, again, it wasn't generated by me or whatever. It was in an interview. I was interviewing someone and I was like, oh, what an interesting shift in priorities. So I really appreciate your perspective. Thank you for sharing.
Any other questions for anyone? Let's see what's in the chat. Well, we're happy to answer any questions, and I know we're at time right now. Thank you so much for being part of the session and letting us share some of the things we're doing. And we look forward to following up with so many of you on the great work that you are doing. Nina, anything else you want to add at the end?
No, I just want to emphasize we really would love to connect, so please feel free to email us. We've sent a ton of links, and I'm told that the chat will be sent out along with the recording. So if you weren't able to copy stuff over, that'll be shared with you all. But yeah, please do reach out if you want to connect.
Thanks, everyone. And I guess
all.
we see you. Is there another big group meeting now?
I believe so. Yeah, I believe we can.
Okay, so we leave this group and we go to the big group. Thanks, everyone.